Let's do this. Super Bowl champion coach, football analyst, and a BYU tight end great, Brian Bilick, joined us via Skype earlier on our Deseret First Credit Union Skype line. Coach, good news. Your height in the official BYU football athletic profile has been correctly adjusted to 6 feet 5 inches and now 230 pounds. So that's an improvement since the last time we talked here.
Yeah, well, you were trying to wear me down before. I'm used to people trying to take away my Super Bowl ring and wear me down, but I appreciate that we got the stats right now.
Now, there are not many places we'd rather be than Provo, but I think on a boat in the Chesapeake Bay would be maybe at the top of the list. So what's the weather like today on the bay?
Oh, it is gorgeous. We got about a north wind coming in at about 10 knots. It's making my way up to the Inner Harbor. I'm doing the preseason games for the Baltimore Ravens, so I'm just kind of cruising around the Chesapeake and jumping off and doing games. Life can't get better than hanging out on the Chesapeake and jumping off and doing a little football, and now get to talk a little BYU football.
And we're just going to call you Captain Bilick with
That'll do.
the
That'll
knots.
do.
And yeah, that's
a lot better than what a lot of people call me. So that's pretty good.
Coach, at this point in the season, what is the hardest part as a head football coach going into game number 1?
Well, I'm going to steal a Donald Rumsfeld line. It's the unknown unknowns. There are known knowns, and you know how good you are in certain areas and how you may perform. They're the known unknowns, when inexperience. But it's the unknown unknowns, which usually means injuries. Coach Satake, I imagine, he knows he's going to be good on defense. Looks like the offensive line is pretty experienced. Those are known knowns. The known unknowns are, the inexperience at some of the skill positions. Confidence in them, got a lot of athleticism, but until they've actually done it over an entire season. And then the unknown unknowns is where do the injuries come, and do they tend to stack up at one position. That tends to be what weighs on a coach's mind most.
It's hard to know what to gauge and how much to gauge when you play an FCS opponent in the first game. So, in your opinion, what would be a successful showing for BYU in Game 1 against Portland State?
Yeah, it's kind of a danged if you do and danged if you don't. You're expected to win, and it's never enough. But if you do, now you're running it up. Obviously, and they're a team coming off, a 3-8 season. They're starting a true freshman quarterback. So how good a team this is. But, they're coming up on a tough row here with 3 top 25 teams with LSU, Utah, and Wisconsin. So this is kind of a good warm-up. I don't want to say it's like a preseason game. I don't want to dismiss Portland State that way. But for Coach Satake, I can imagine he wants to get those starters an outing and maybe get a little of the backups playing a little bit. Hopefully the game's control where you can get a little bit of depth working there as well. Whatever the score will be, it will be. They're on the schedule, so we're going to play them.
Looking at the current BYU team, what are your thoughts about this specific team from a personnel standpoint going into that first game against Portland State?
Well, it appears that, again, they're going to be really good on defense, and that's a good place to be, when you're talking about being to have that as your anchor. Obviously, with a new quarterback, but one that has played a little bit. Appears to be a lot of talent, wide receiver and running back with good depth, just not a whole lot of experience. I think what the leading receiver coming back is Trinaman, if I'm pronouncing that properly, with 28 receptions. So I imagine they're going to want to get some snaps under their belt. I know they utilize a lot of people. Having confidence in your offensive line, I think they've got 4 starters that are back. So that having that confidence up front with your team is a good thing. The quarterback's got to have confidence with it. So it's an exciting time for them as well, because if you've got a good anchor on defense, as I said, I'm doing the Ravens games. They're kind of in the same situation, playing really good defense. They have some potential on offense. I don't think their offensive line is as stable as BYU. And, of course, they're waiting for Joe Flacco to come back, and that's the unknown unknown because he's got a back injury. And they're waiting for Ryan Mallett to step in. So a lot of positive things. I got to believe Coach Satake's very pleased that he's got a game against a Portland State before he jumps in, goes down to Houston, plays LSU, and, of course, the big rivalry with Utah, and then Wisconsin, who I think is currently a top 10 team.
Yeah, a couple of big games coming up for sure. Let's talk about some of the Cougars in the NFL and Jamaal Williams and Taysom Hill in Green Bay. Let's start with Taysom Hill. What are your impressions of his play so far through the first couple of preseason games?
I think he's playing well. It sounds like the backup from UCLA.
Brett Hundley.
Brett Hundley has kind of solidified the number 2 spot. He's been around a little bit, good athletic quarterback. Seems to be a battle at number 3 with the Callahan kid. And it sounds like, he's doing very, very well. I don't know. The key will be if the Packers keep 2 or 3 quarterbacks. The vogue thing in the NFL right now is to carry just 2 quarterbacks and carry 1 on the developmental squad. That way you hold that 53rd spot for special teams and some depth. And that's not a bad place to be in the developmental squad. And then, you deal with it as you go. But right now, I've got to believe that Taysom is playing well. He's battling well. He's got a better completion percentage. He's a good athlete. And I know Coach McCarthy very, very well in that athleticism. You look at the starter in Aaron Rodgers, what's his strength? His ability to make plays outside the pocket, because that really breaks down a defense. And I got to believe that Taysom, that's going to be a positive, something that they will lean towards him in terms of the quarterback battle, whether it's on the active roster or they go ahead and do the developmental squad. And as far as Jamal, he's with a great team. We all know Green Bay needs running backs. Now they've got Ty Montgomery, a former receiver, turned running back out of Stanford, who really played well. That's the vogue thing in the NFL right now, isn't it? It's to have a guy out of the backfield. The Ravens have Danny Woodhead. Obviously, you're talking about a whole nother level with Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh. So Ty Montgomery is kind of the new wave, but he's not a guy. They need someone that in short yardage, in the red zone, 4-minute, a guy that we want to just legitimately run the ball. And I got to think that Jamal Williams fits that bill. So I got to think that he's doing real well for them, and they're excited that he can bring them that element.
Super Bowl champion coach, football analyst, and BYU tight end great head coach Brian Bilick is with us on BYU Sports Nation now, doing some analysis for NFL games. Coach, you brought up Jamaal Williams' name. Aaron Rodgers specifically pinpointed him as a big part of what we are going to do moving forward. What type of production do you realistically anticipate from a rookie running back out of BYU?
Well, they're, like I said, I think they're excited to have a guy with those physical abilities. They've got a Ty Montgomery, so to think that he's going to be that guy out of the backfield and running, he'll fill that role. I think Montgomery will. But I can see, and again, I don't know that Jamal's going to be a 300-plus carry guy. There's only one in the league last year with Ezekiel Elliott. If I got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, I'm only going to hand the ball off so many times. But I know Mike McCarthy desperately wants to run the ball. Particularly, you want to be able to run the ball when you want to run the ball. Like I said, whether it be in the red zone, plus 10-yard line, 4-minute, the ability to close out a game with a good physical running game. So I think they can be excited. Anytime you can get that balance, I got to believe Aaron Rodgers is really excited about having the potential for that kind of productivity in the running game, because the ability to, and they like to play some no huddle. If you're playing Aaron Rodgers, what do you got to do? I'm going to back everybody up. I'm going to play a real passive zone. And if I got a guy that with a good number count in the box, where I got a hat on a hat that can do some damage like Jamal can, that he's got to be real excited about that.
If you like this analysis, you can get a lot of it at Coach Bilick on Twitter. Follow him on Facebook as well. Let's talk about your Baltimore Ravens. You're doing some games in the preseasons for them. Some BYU guys there, Bronson Kafusi, DeAndre Wesley, Robertson Daniel. We were hoping Dennis Pitta would be in the mix as well, but he got another hip injury. Tell us about the BYU guys on the Ravens. How are they looking?
Well, they're doing well. Kafusi had a great game against Miami. Went down to Miami last week. They're very, very deep in the defensive line. And so I can't imagine him not making the roster, even though they are deep. He's in some competition. They like that rotation. But even without that, and I do believe he'll make the team, people are going to covet those defensive linemen. So the Ravens are going to have some opportunity, maybe some trades. They're really struggling on the offensive line, which we'll talk about in a minute with Wesley in there competing. But they've got some needs. And so their defensive line is going to have some trade potential. We could see that at the end of training camp, where now they don't have the interim cut down. Normally, after this week, we'd cut down to 75 from 90 and go to 53. Well, they're doing it in one fell swoop at the end of the preseason, all down to 53. So everybody's going to, there's going to be a lot of moving around, a lot of trades maybe with the Ravens for defensive linemen. Although I don't think Kafusi, I think they'll want to hold on to him. He's got that good leverage, big, strong upper body. He's staying healthy. He's had a good training camp. But if not, he could be traded. trade potential, but I don't think so for him. I think he's going to be solid. Wesley, now the offensive line's struggling. So Wesley, they're desperately in need of that third rotation tackle. Now they brought in Austin Howard to go behind James Hurst, excuse me. They've had to use him at right tackle, left tackle, at guard. They've had a lot of injuries, and it's been a different offensive line. So that's a positive for a guy like Wesley to come in, show what he could do. He's going to make the team, again, like we talked about with Tyson, at the very least at the developmental squad, because you're not going to let go of a good offensive lineman. That developmental squad, you're going to hold on to those linemen. But the way they're rolling through, I expect to see more of them. If not this game, they're playing at home against Buffalo. But obviously in the closing out with the finale against New Orleans, we could see a lot of them, give them an opportunity to make that active roster. To be on the 53, I don't know if he'll be on active roster on game day, but you're normally going to carry 4 tackles. If not, he's got a real opportunity for developmental squad. And then Robertson Daniel, a little bit different. They got more depth at corner, has played limited, hasn't really shown up a lot. Got to show up on special teams. That's where he's going to make this team. Again, some potential for developmental squad. It is a good thing, the league has changed. Used to be you were 60% base, 40% nickel. Then it changed, and it was 40% base and 60% nickel. I had one defensive coordinator tell me that they're going to be in base defense less than 25% of the time in the NFL.
Wow.
So that changes your numbers on the defensive line and how many DBs you want to carry. So if indeed as these rosters change, he may have a real opportunity or some other team clearly on a developmental squad, because of the depth that you need at the DB position.
Coach, we are thrilled to have you as part of the BYU Sports Nation team. We're going to do this once a week through the football season. I feel like I should still call you Captain Bilick, but on Twitter you are at Coach Bilick. Follow his Twitter account and his Facebook account for more of this fantastic analysis. It's been great to talk to you.
Great, guys. I appreciate it. Look forward to doing it next week.